Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. You've all completed the survey now. This is a very different lecture to what I've done in the past, but probably the most important one. This is actually our first launch lecture, and it's to promote a national campaign. It's to give you awareness about what is happening. We're going to meet the ethics of halal. We're going to look at the hidden halal crisis. We're going to expose what's going on. We're going to look at the modern farming methods. Are these compatible with the Quran and Hadiths, especially within developing countries? And we're going to be looking at animal rearing and welfare, which is to do with Tayyib, which I will in a minute explain to you what Tayyib is. And also the big question, to stun or not to stun. Very, very important question. I get this all the time from the community, that some people are saying stunned is okay, some people are saying it's not okay. What do we do? A little bit about myself. I have many hats within the community, but today's hat is actually going to take me right back in time. So if we look at, I've got on there BSc Honours in Biotechnology, which was years and years ago. That was my degree, but it is very, very relevant to this. The degree actually did cover genetically modified foods, genetic engineering, artificial methods, which have actually been refined over the time, you know, from the days when I did that. I also worked in Moorfields Eye Hospital and at the back in the laboratories, and I did come across animal torture, animal testing and cruelty, mainly looking at monkey brains and things like that, monkey eyes we were dissecting, things like that. So this is a joint initiative with HAWA, which is Halal Animal Welfare Association, and we have got sisters and brothers in the audience. We're all wearing green with HAWA badges, so if any of you want to talk to us afterwards when we eat, that would be fine, but also during the question and answer session as well. We've also got actually a Halal and Tayyib farm here today. We've got Brother Imran in the audience who's going to deal with the brothers, and we've got Sister Simon here in the sisters who will answer any questions directly from the farm. They know exactly everything that is happening. And that's actually based near Chelmsford. This talk is in 3 parts. We will be looking, first of all, at the requirements of halal, what's going on nowadays, and then the steps forward. What can we do about it? At the end, there will be hot food afterwards, inshallah, so do please all stay for that. So who can tell me the first slaughter that took place in history? And I want you to put your hands up, because there's a lot of people, mashallah, in the audience, and if you all shouted out all at once, I wouldn't know where to look. So if you can put your hand up if you know the answer. Who knows the very first slaughter that took place in history? Any ideas? Yes, let's have you.
The slaughter of the animal when Allah asked Ibrahim to slaughter his son.
Okay, that's a good answer, but not yet. We need to go back in time way before that. It's documented in the Quran. Let's have the brother there.
The first one is Habil and Qabil. Good,
excellent answer. Okay, so if we look at this genealogy tree, it was right at the time of Adam alayhi salam, okay, where the story is of Habil and Qabil, the 2 sons, and they were ordered to make a sacrifice. It's quite a long story, which I'm going to cover in December, the whole story of the creation. But they all wanted to marry the same wife, both of them, and basically they were ordered to give a sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whoever's sacrifice is accepted, that brother would then marry that wife. Okay? And it says in the Quran, narrate to them in all truth the story of the 2 sons of Adam, when they made an offering and it was accepted from one of them and was not accepted from the other. The latter said, I'll surely kill you. Thereupon the former said, Allah accepts offerings only from the God-fearing. That's Surah Ma'idah, chapter 5, the table spread of food, verse 27. And what happened was, Qabil actually did a sacrifice of vegetation, and Habil did a sacrifice of a lamb, an animal slaughter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the animal slaughter. The reason is he was more pious. Okay? Okay, let's now move on in our tree to the next era, which is Judaism. Who can tell me now the next slaughter that is documented in history? I think you told me already. What is it? Do you want to repeat again?
It's slaughtering of the animal for the Eid.
Ibrahim alayhi salam, you
Yes,
mentioned, didn't
yes,
you?
yes.
Okay. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, we all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him to sacrifice his son, and just as he was about to sacrifice him, in the Quran it says, and when they had both submitted, and he put him down up on his forehead, he called to him, "O Ibrahim, you have fulfilled the vision indeed, with us reward the doers of good." And then we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a ram there, beautiful white ram, in his son's place, and it says, and we ransomed him with a great sacrifice. That is in Safat chapter 37 verse 107. And we left this blessing for him among generations to come in later times. Again in the same surah. And this is actually referring to Eid. So this became a sacrifice every year done, year after year on Eid. Okay? Does anybody know anything else in terms of halal or food that was revealed to the Jews? Or something that wasn't quite right? Shall we have our special guest today, all the way from Croydon?
Manna and salwa.
Pardon?
Manna and salwa.
Yes, good. Anything else to do with what wasn't going right in the Jewish laws? So kosher meat was actually pronounced then, but there was something that wasn't going right, and then it was corrected in the Quran. Does anybody know the answer to this one? Yes, let's have, is it Zainab?
Yeah. They're not eating the lamb's leg?
No. No. Okay, did you know that there were so many rules that the Jews then put on top of food that were not there at all? They over-exaggerated. They wanted to make their religion supernatural. They wanted to pretend their religion is the best. And there were so many rules that they actually imposed themselves on top of stuff. So it actually tells us that in the Quran. Does anybody know some of the foods that they made up really, and they were not really supposed, they could eat all of these, but these are extra rules they put on? Yes, shall we have
seafood? Because they don't eat prawns and things.
Yes, that is one of them, but there's two other major ones that I'm trying to get to. Yes, Sophia?
Yaqub alayhi salam forbade himself some meat, and they made it a rule.
Yes, good. Meat with what?
Fat.
The fat.
Meat with milk. Okay? That they made up. There was another one. Meat with something else, which is absolutely fine.
Is it fish?
Fish. Good girl. Well done. Okay, so meat and fish and meat and milk. All of a sudden this isn't allowed. And did you know there were actually 30 rules that they made up to do with food, and that they are not allowed to do on Shabbat. So even all related to food is in things like the fridge, like they don't have a light on in the fridge and things like that. So for wrongdoing on the part of the Jews, we made unlawful for them certain good foods which had been lawful to them, and for their averting from the way of Allah many people. And that is in Quran, Surah Nisa, Women, chapter 4, verse 160. Let's now fast forward the times to Christianity. Okay, now you know already that Jesus was a Jew, so he must have eaten kosher. Okay, the Jewish Christians were the majority in the early church, and they kept the Torah and they did eat kosher. They never ate pork or anything unclean according to the Torah. But later on, Christianity spread, and it was actually the non-Jews, the Gentiles, who were the pagans. They were Romans, and they ate lots of pork, lots and lots of pork. And what they did was they did not keep the whole Torah of Moses, and they first of all got rid of circumcision, and then the next thing was they started eating pork and non-kosher. So non-kosher actually started 200 years after the original Christians. Did you know that? But originally, the original Christians did not eat pork. So it's 200 years later that stopped. And now we're going to move forward to which religion?
Islam.
Who's great? Islam. Good and brilliant Islam. Allah updated the laws to complete our religion and sent down the Quran, which is the final testament. Not the Old Testament, not the New Testament, but the final testament. The final piece to the jigsaw puzzle. And did you know that something extra was then revealed in our religion as well as halal, which is the same as kosher, or similar to kosher? He introduced Tayyib as well, okay? And Islam is a very green religion caring for the environment. There is actually some brochures out there about Islam and the environment, which you can pick up later on. And did you know that every time the word halal in terms of food was mentioned, the word tayyib was mentioned with it in the Quran, which people are ignoring that word tayyib. And it's very, very important because in our religion the rules were updated and halal was combined with tayyib. And it's actually at least in 4 ayahs in the Quran. So eat out of the lawful and good sustenance then Allah has bestowed upon you, and thank Allah for His beauty, if it is Him that you serve. And that is in Surah Nahl, the B, chapter 16, verse 114. So in the Quran, for the first time, it was mentioned, halal was mentioned with the word tayyib, and this means how the animal was raised. Natural, pure, wholesome, and clean. Okay, without the use of any artificial chemicals. And did you know that it is equally as important as how the meat is slaughtered? So if something is not being reared in a natural, healthy way, no amount of Bismillah or Allahu Akbar at the end of its life is going to make it halal. And we have to understand this. But just to explain the word tayyib a little bit more, it's a little bit like nurturing of a child. You don't just install Islam at the end of its life or when it reaches puberty. It's a nurturing process the whole way through, where you're constantly telling the child about the environment, about eating halal, and then telling them about the shahada and things like that. And that is actually a little bit like animals. So we're rearing them, making them grow, looking after them, caring about them. Did you know that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was really cared about animals? And we need to follow his sunnah. So, O people, eat of the lawful and pure things in the earth, and follow not in the footsteps of Shaitan, for surely he is your open enemy. That is in Surah Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 168, the cow. Before looking at the rearing of an animal, let's look at now what is forbidden for us to eat. All the things that are not permissible for us to eat first, and then we'll look at what's permissible, and then we'll go into the rearing and then the slaughter. So what is not permissible? Anybody got any ideas? Yes? Good. And that was not permissible to the Jews or the Christians either. Allah has forbidden you the flesh of swine. That is actually mentioned in 4 surahs in the Quran. Did you know that it is not just unclean for us, but it's also the behavior of the animal which stops us eating. So let's have a look at some of the things. Modern research actually has told us that eating pork causes 70 diseases, including roundworm, pinworm, hookworm, and tapeworm, harbours in the intestine and is very long. Its eggs enter the blood and damage bodily organs. If it enters the brain, it can cause memory loss. Heart, it can cause heart attack. Eye, it can cause blindness. Liver, it can cause liver damage. A common misconception about pork is that if it is cooked well, these ova die, the eggs. In a research project undertaken again in America, which we all know is a supernatural country, it was found that out of 24 people suffering from trichuriasis, 22 had cooked the pork very well. This indicates that the ova present in the pork do not die under normal cooking temperature. Pork contains excess fat-building material and very little muscle material. This gets deposited in vessels and can cause hypertension and heart attacks. One of my revert friends who used to eat bacon before she became a Muslim told me, you don't need any fat to fry bacon, you just put the bacon in the pan and the whole pan becomes full of fat. Did you know that over 50% of Americans suffer from hypertension? And then pig is the filthiest animal and lives on feces and dirt. In villages where they don't have modern toilets, excretion is cleared by pigs, so they are good scavengers. So it's a very, very dirty animal. So did you also know that a pig's digestive tract system is different to ours, so their poo is more toxic? Did you know that also we are not allowed to eat blood? Does anybody know why we are not allowed to eat blood? What is it in there that is toxic for us? Does anybody know? Are there any scientists here?
It contains bacteria and
Yes.
toxins.
It does. Do you know any names? Begins with a U. There's your clue, everybody.
Urea.
Urea, good. Urea, did you know, is in blood. So did you know that there is a high content of urea more than any other animal in pigs? And did you know that some countries do actually argue that if pigs are bred in very clean and hygienic conditions, then it's absolutely fine. But pigs are kept together in sties, and no matter how hard you keep them clean, they are filthy by nature. They eat and enjoy their own as well as other neighbours' excreta. And this is why they have a higher urea content in their blood, because they are eating and drinking other animals' poo, basically. And the last one is the behaviour of a pig. A pig is very shameless. It invites its friends to have relationships with its mate. If you eat pigs, you behave like pigs. You are what you eat. And did you know that some research has actually been done in America where they have proven this point? Also, did you know that a research project was done again in America where there was a whole village that ate a lot of pork, and they found that there was more shamelessness in that village, more wife swapping, sleeping around with other people's wives and that kind of stuff, which was actually taken from the behaviour of the animal. Okay, what other kinds of animals are haram in Islam? Because before we even look at the Tayyib and Halal bit, we need to select the right animals, don't we? Okay, so shall we have Nasrin?
Horses and donkeys.
Yeah, but there's always a reason. I want the category.
Because they're used to carry load.
Yeah, that's not quite right, but I will come to the donkey bit in a minute, because there are other animals that we use to eat. Shall we have you?
Yeah, I believe it's carnivorous animals.
Good, that's the answer I'm looking for. I'm looking for the category, not individual. That's a brilliant answer. Now, carnivorous animals are forbidden because, again, they're eating other animals that have got blood in them, so they have more urea content in them. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ forbade the eating of every bird that has got claws. Anything that has claws or a sharp beak, you know it's carnivorous. And that is actually in Muslim 3574. And we're looking at birds of prey here, like falcons, eagles, owls, vultures. Okay? And here's some more. So we've got things that have fangs. We do not eat them for two reasons. One, they have a lot of blood inside them, so they have more urea in them. And here is the Quranic ayah. Allah has forbidden you blood. That is in Quran chapter 2 verse 173, and it's in 3 other ayahs as well. 5 other, there's 5 chapter 5 verse 3, chapter 6 verse 145, and chapter 16 verse 115. It's in 4. And what's the other reason why we don't eat carnivorous animals? One is the higher urea content in their blood. What's the other one? Something I spoke to you about just now with the pig. Any ideas? Shall we have the brother right at the very back?
behave like, you end up behaving like them.
Good. You end up behaving like them. They're vicious, aren't they? So here we go. There's our lion, and he is not acting nice. Okay. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade the eating of every animal that has fangs, and the other main reason is that we end up behaving like them, and we're a really green religion, aren't we? Okay. So only basically herbivores were allowed to eat, but we'll come to that bit in a minute. Okay, another category of animals we are not allowed to eat. Now this we did cover in my jinns lecture. There's your biggest clue.
Dead animals?
Dead animals we're going to come to in a minute. We're looking at live animals first.
Reptiles.
Reptiles, why?
Yeah, reptiles.
But why? Shall we have, can we put our hands up please? Zainab's daughter, have you got the answer?
Because you said like snakes, for example, they can be jinn.
Good, there's jinns in them, okay? Jinns can be in them, so that's why we do not eat them. What's the biggest one that I mentioned before even I went to reptiles? No. Yes.
Dogs.
Dogs. Do you remember I mentioned dogs in my gym lecture? We're not allowed to eat dogs because they can be forms of shaitan, okay? And somebody also mentioned reptiles, snakes and crocodiles as well. We're not allowed to eat them for a reason, because did you know that reptiles, there are forms of shaitan? I don't know if anybody knows the Ibrahim alayhi salam story where he was chucked in the fire and all the animals put water on him except for the chameleon, he didn't. And that's actually documented in the hadiths. Why didn't he? Because he was a shaitan in disguise. Okay? Right, any others?
A monkey?
I'm looking at creepy crawlies on the floor that everyone's scared of.
Spiders.
Okay, so basically anything that are pests, okay, like rats or scorpions or spiders, we are not allowed to eat those either. Okay? And dead animals is one of them. I will come to that bit in a minute when we do the slaughter business. Okay, so dead animals is another good one. Okay. And these are all the halal animals, all domestic birds, all cattle, sheep, goats, camels, all types of deer, rabbits and fish. But out of all of those animals, we are not allowed to eat certain organs of these halal animals. Anything that has flowing blood, male and female reproductory organs, testicles, pancreas, gallbladder or bladder. Some of those have got a higher urea content in them again. If you look at bladder, that has so much urea in there, so that's the reason. The game of the water and eating thereof are permitted to you as a provision for you, and that is Quran Surah Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 96, tablespoon of food. So anything from the sea is fine, but not carnivorous fish like sharks or piranhas, okay? But we can eat vegetarian things. So we've got dolphins there in that picture, and we have got whales there in that picture. We know that that's okay because when we go to Jannah, what will be our first meal? Does anybody know?
Whale's liver.
Good, whale liver. Some of you will remember that from my Jannah lecture. That is in Bukhari, and that's chapter 8, 76, 5 to 7, and in Muslim as well. It's in two very important hadiths. Okay, now let us look at halal meat. So we've selected our animals that are okay now, and now we need to look at the rearing of the animal first, Tayyib, which is very, very important, and then we are going to go on to the slaughter. So we looked at the factory farming industry. Like I explained to you earlier, we've got a halal and Tayyib farm actually here with us today. And 99% of the halal meat you are eating is coming from factory conditions. It's not natural farming anymore. And some of you are aware of this. I've come across so many sisters who have told me, you know, that all this is going on. There's been a rise in cancer. There's been so many problems out there. So people do know, but nobody's actually acknowledged that there's a problem and ever talked about it, which is why this is quite a unique talk today, because we are going to address some of these problems. So from your survey, who can tell me which animal is the most eaten out of all of them?
Chicken.
Chicken, good. You all like your chicken. Okay, so there's our survey results based on so far the results that we've got. And the green part is chicken, 60.66%, which is a lot really. Eat chicken. And for your information, did you know that chickens are the most abused animal in the industry? And we are going to now look at what abuse is going on with chickens, okay? So we are going to focus on chickens first. Okay, so first of all, there are different breeds for egg laying and different for meat, but we're going to start off with the hens, first of all, that are used for egg laying. And did you know that chickens naturally need 16 hours of natural sunlight in order to give eggs? We used to have a pet hen in our garden. We had it for 8 years, and every time it was spring, it would always give us more eggs in springtime. And then in the winter, it slowed down. So it needs natural sunlight in order to give eggs. And in this country, do we get any sunlight? Hardly any. It's always dark, isn't it? So basically what's happening is in countries where there are less daylight hours, eggs are being produced by giving the hens artificial light. So what's going on is that they are rearing 40,000 birds in single units with artificial light, and the light is manipulated to make more eggs. The egg-laying hens stay inside whilst the eggs go to the shops. Okay, so that is what is happening with those egg-laying hens. And then with the other hens, which are needed, chicken is needed for meat strain, these are intensively reared. Chickens are kept indoors and have their light switched off for 1 hour each night. So they eat and drink for 23 hours each day under artificial lights to make them grow really quickly. So the monster breed that is inbred grows very quickly in 4 weeks. This is actually to keep up with the demand of everyone eating so much chicken out there. Hundreds of birds are cramped together in dark sheds, and they are all ready to eat in 4 weeks. How are they ready to eat in 4 weeks? Does anybody know what is being fed to them?
Drugs.
Drugs, somebody said.
Yeah.
Shall we have Priscilla?
Hormones.
Hormones, anything else? Yes?
Antibiotics.
Antibiotics, good. You look like you're well into healthy eating from a very young age. So I've put children on here for a reason, which I will come to in a minute. So they are fed steroids, growth hormones, and drip-fed antibiotics from day 1 to the day they are slaughtered. Recently, growth hormones have been banned, but antibiotics are used instead and work as a growth promoter. And did you know that they are then vaccinated before starting their life indoors? The meat strains stay indoors and the eggs go to huge incubators where the chicks hatch. They are then vaccinated before starting their life indoors. And if you're on a regular course of antibiotics, you may know that you put on weight really, really quickly. So it helps the birds bloat and get very, very fat. So the chickens have never seen daylight. Do you know when they see daylight? When they're ready to come out to be slaughtered, which is so, so sad. And if you look at children, there's a reason why I've put children on the slide. You only give children steroids and antibiotics for medical reasons, but not for growth. You definitely don't routinely give them antibiotics either, do you? And if you look at a child, you look at the slow development of your own child, their bones, their muscles, they develop slowly over years. And if you actually speed up that process, what you're doing is you're actually not going to get properly developed muscles and bones. And medication, if you would just give it all the time to your child, it's not going to grow up right, is it? A lot of birds you are eating will be taken from the abattoirs in factory conditions with broken limbs, weak bone structure, chronic pain, and then they are slaughtered. And did you know that one of the conditions for Tayyib is that they have to be healthy birds, nothing broken, no parts fallen off, no disease, completely edible and healthy. So we have to go back a step and look at the way the animals are living. We are missing a really, really important point here. Also, an animal, you cannot just make it Islamic at the end, when throughout the whole process you're not giving it any knowledge of Islam, they're not developing Islam in them, Islam is not instilled in them, and then just at the end when they're teenagers you tell them to start praying and things like that. It's the same kind of concept. So at the end of an animal's life, when they're being slaughtered and just putting the tasmiyah on them isn't enough, it's the rearing of that animal as well. Also, from a young age, you have to tell children about halal. Before they even start school, you tell them, don't you? You don't eat pig, and you're not allowed to eat this, and you're not allowed to eat that. You connect the child with nature and loving animals like the Prophet did. Something else awful happening is that in the case of caged barns, their lights are manipulated. These sheds are computer-controlled factories where everything is automated. Lights, feed, water, temperature. The only time they see natural daylight is when they are transported to the slaughterhouse. And because they are in such close proximity to one another, they are very, very likely to catch lots and lots of diseases as well. So the birds can peck each other to death in such close quarters. This is actually a halal Tayyib chicken, and this is an intensively reared chicken. And did you know that this website here actually is all about ex-battery hens, and you can see examples of the way chickens look. They eat and excrete in the same place, which means that they are more likely to have coccidiosis, which is a disease. And did you know that some halal meat is actually imported from other countries, which may have even a lower welfare standards as well? And that was actually in your questionnaire. So did you know that the cheaper your meat is, the more likely the meat is going to be like this? The more expensive your meat is, the more likely it is that it's reared properly. This is why you get organic meat is always more expensive than normal meat, which we will come to organic in a minute. So eating well is a form of self-respect. You buy now and you pay later. Okay, the cheaper the meat, the more likely there's something wrong with it, the more problems it will cause you and your health. Basically, you are what you eat. You've heard of that phrase, you are what you eat. Something else that's going wrong, the EU imposed restrictions on antibiotic use. So now what the farms are doing is they're using feed packed with additives, hormones, steroids, probiotics, which are microorganisms for beneficial qualities. So all of this is now going on. And did you know that these are being fed to the animals, including genetically modified feed to make pellets, which is actually abnormal for their usual diet. So if you look at that picture, there's cats on there for a reason. They don't normally sit there and eat like we do they? But what's happening is they've been given food which is actually abnormal for their diet. It's all genetically modified and doesn't fit in with their bodily chemistry and their bodily digestive system, if you like. And then all those chemicals are actually going into our products, including eggs. Eggs are concentrated with all these impurities, and actually vegetables are as well, but we're just concentrating on meat today. There's been lots and lots of studies done, and did you know that there was a study done, an antibiotics resistance linking human and animal health by Henrik. The reference is the Institute of Medicine in America, Washington, DC. And the overuse of antibiotics is causing antibiotics resistance in humans by residues left in meat before human consumption. And did you know, very recently there was an article in the Guardian newspaper where UK medics had called on to the government to ban and to cut antibiotic resistance. Because what's happening is people are eating all this meat and they're becoming immune to antibiotics, and it's causing the NHS to have hundreds and hundreds of pounds of problems. We all know there's been cutbacks with the NHS and they're not allowed to prescribe antibiotics. But what's happening is some people are staying ill and they need to carry on with higher doses or different antibiotics, and it's costing the NHS money and the government money as well. Did you know use of agricultural antimicrobials as food additives in food animal production is a major cause of increasing antimicrobial resistance in human pathogens? This accounts for the increase in total drug production. There's also a very big environmental problem as well. So antimicrobial use contaminates air, water and soils near food animal production sites. The reference is actually from industrial food animal production, antimicrobial resistance and human health. The whole reference is there. If anybody's interested, I can send it to you. And while we're talking about the environment, I came across something really shocking the other day with bees. That's all to wake you up. So did you know that one of my friends, she's actually here from her farm, gave me a lovely bottle of homemade honey. And when I tasted it, I thought, do you know what, that doesn't taste that sweet. The honey in our house is much more sweeter than that. And she told me a horror story. She said that what's happening is the bees nowadays, they are drinking from special sugar legs that are made especially for them. And hence, the honey that we are eating is just sugar. It's not natural honey. And that does worry me, because if we look at Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us about honey, and he told us about the hundreds of benefits that are in honey. All the, antibacterial things that are in there, and all these agents that are in honey that is, helps us with our health. They're all not there if it's sugar and water. So this is what the Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, used to love sweet edible things and honey. That is in Sahih Bukhari. And he also mentioned about how good it is for us. But if it's just sugar and water, it's not going to be good for us, is it? All the healing properties goes when it's artificially made. Another thing that's happening to animals is they are being crossbred. Some of you must know this already, because we know there are fruits that are being crossbred. So animals are being artificially made. They are crossbred to produce more muscular animals, resulting in more meat. There's a more meaty animal there, isn't there? He's got a lot more muscle than the parents have. So that is what is happening. And also artificial insemination to make animals pregnant. A cow, for example, think of ourselves. We give milk only after pregnancy, yes? And then after the baby stops weaning, we don't give milk anymore. Why is it that cows are giving milk all year round? There's a really big problem here. So artificial insemination to make animals pregnant. A cow is in constant state of lactation by keeping them pregnant. If milked constantly, did you know that they get mastitis, which is infection of their udders? So then they are injected with antibiotics to stop this happening, which then passes into our milk. Did you know that the milk also has pus in it because of this infection? And what's really shocking is that 400 million cells per litre of red and white pus cells is allowed in our milk. Even in organic milk, there's some as well. So this is actually a really big problem. Did you know that, this is something my other friend told me from Hawaii. She mentioned about sheep, male sheep not wanting to have relationships with female sheep. And because of that, the female sheep are having artificial insemination done to make them pregnant, which, really worries me. There's also hormone tampering and artificial insemination to sync reproduction cycles for better output of eggs and hence chickens as well. So that is going on as well. Okay. The other thing about cows is that in the Quran it actually tells you that verily in cattle there is a lesson for you. We give you to drink of what is inside their bodies, coming from a conjunction between the contents of the intestine and the blood, and milk pure and pleasant for those who drink it. That is in Surah An-Nahl, the B. Now, what's interesting is Allah is telling you that although the milk comes from the same area as all the vessels and things, one of the miracles of Allah is He separated the blood and the milk. But when we're having this milk that's got pus in it, are we not tampering with nature then? Are we not going against what the Quran says about milk? So it's a big worry there. Okay, farmers are able to raise goats, sheep and cows indoors on medicated feed, antibiotics, without ever letting them onto fields. By animal not grazing, did you know we're not fertilizing our land, hence the need for man-made artificial fertilizers. The cycle, actually, the whole environmental cycle is broken. So free range, we are going to talk about free range and organic, and we will go into detail about this. So free range means animals spend an equal time indoors as that is spent outdoors. That's all it means, by the way. It doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't look at the way the animal's reared or what it's fed. It only looks at the fact that the animals have spent equal time outdoors as well as in. So it's regardless, actually, as the law stands, if the animal can have an equal amount of time inside the barn and outside on pasture, it can be labelled free range regardless of any other factors. So it does not define what it's eaten or the rearing, or if it's been crossbred or artificial insemination, none of that. And then organic. Let's look at organic now. Organic is an EU guideline and is good with the rearing aspect, but did you know that all organic stuff is all stunned? So we are going to look at stunning in a minute, which is the next section. Halal and Tayyib cannot be equated to free range or organic at all. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ loved animals and he taught us to look after them really properly before they are slaughtered. So now let us look at the slaughtering procedure. Does anybody know what the first thing is that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told us to do before we slaughter an animal?
Bismillah.
Pardon?
Bismillah.
Yeah, not yet. We haven't even got to that stage yet.
Sure.
So that's jumping far ahead. Let's have Priscilla.
Give it water.
Good, excellent. Priscilla, mashallah, is one of my top students. I'm really, really pleased with her. She's really good. Water should be offered to the animal before slaughter, and it should not be slaughtered when hungry. Umar once saw a man denying a sheep which was going to slaughter a satiating measure of water to drink. He gave the man a beating with his lash and told him, go water it properly at the time of its death. So that's actually documented in the Hadiths. Okay, what's next? Should the animal know that it is about to be slaughtered? Should it know that? No, lots of nodding heads in the sisters. Okay, so it's not allowed to know that it is about to die or that it is about to be killed, because a huge amount of fear goes in the animal. Once the fear goes in, the adrenaline rises in the animal and it causes the muscle to become stiff. This then affects the colour and tenderness of the meat of the animal. So here it is. This was actually one of your questions on your survey. Do you believe if an animal is allowed to see another animal whilst being slaughtered, that this is halal? And thankfully most of you said no. Okay? So here are these animals. They're not allowed to see each other being killed either. Forget about just themselves. They're not allowed to see each other being killed. Imam Ali said, do not slaughter sheep in the presence of other sheep or any animal in the presence of other animals. So this is actually not happening. Did you know that there are lines of animals all being lined up to be slaughtered? They can all see not just the ones next to them, but the whole line. So they know exactly what is going on. Mass slaughter is happening nowadays where everyone is seeing each other. Okay, then somebody mentioned the tasmiyah, that's the next bit. So once they do not know anything else, then did you know that the tasmiyah has to be said, and there's a reason. This goes again back to my jinns lecture. Did you know that listening to the Holy Quran is just amazing? It has positive electromagnetic sound waves in it, and it makes the animal really calm. It's a natural sedative. Did you know that there are journals to prove that when the Quran is said over water, the cells become whole? They're irregular before, and then when you hear the lovely meditating sound of the Quran, actually the cells go circular around. This is why we actually say our Bismillah before we eat our food as well. The sound waves of the recitation of the Quran activate body cells, and it cures illnesses, especially heart attack and cancer. And the tasbiyah refers to invoking the name of Allah when slaughtering, so as to ask His permission. And basically the whole tasbiyah is actually Bismillahi Allahu Akbar. But did you know that nowadays audios are being used, so it's not live. You're not saying those sound waves live. Do you remember when we talked about the jinns lecture, we spoke about the ruqya, and I said it's no good playing it on a tape. The best effect is coming live from somebody right there, because the sound waves are different coming from a tape recorder. So did you know that the tasmiyah is being said just from a tape recorder, and because of the demand of how many animals are being slaughtered, the tasmiyah is actually being cut in half. So the full tasmiyah is not being said, just Allahu Akbar, and not even on every animal, because the animal is going by so very quickly. The other reason why we say the tasbiyah, actually let me read the Quranic ayah. Forbidden to you for food are that on which any other name has been invoked besides that of Allah. And that is mentioned 4 times in the Quran, including in Surah Baqarah and Surah Ma'idah as well. So did you know that that is actually one of the requirements of our meat being halal, is the full tasmiyah being said on there. Did you know that when you say that, I found this absolutely beautiful, that it's a natural sedative, and you know the animal, it becomes soothed and it submits to Allah and does not fight you anymore. Isn't that amazing? Look at that bird submitting to the will of Allah. Also, I mentioned about the full tasmiyah not being pronounced. This is because 140 birds a minute are being slaughtered. That's actually 6 to 8 K per hour. So it can't be done, can it? Audio being put on instead and just playing continuously, so it's not even per bird. Also, the other requirement is that the animal should face the Qibla. The chance you hear everything in the heavens and earth prostrates to Allah, willingly or unwillingly, and so do their shadows in the mornings and evenings. That is in Surah Ar-Ra'd, the Thunder, chapter 13, verse 15. Okay, what about next? We've done the tasmiyah, what's next? Anybody? What about the knife? Okay. Have you forgotten the main bit? Okay. So the knife needs to be as sharp as possible so it does not cause any pain to the animal. If you look at a paper cut, you don't even feel it, do you? Till later on, you feel, oh yeah, I've got paper cut. But the sharper it is, you don't feel the pain. You're not allowed to sharpen the knife in front of the animal either. Okay? Al-Shaddad bin Aus has quoted the Holy Prophet ﷺ said, Allah calls for mercy in everything. So be merciful when you kill and when you slaughter. Sharpen your blade so as to cause the animal as little pain as possible. And that is in Sahih Muslim. The animal must be slaughtered by the use of a very sharp knife in one stroke. The knife should be resharpened and cleaned after each slaughter, and the slaughterman must be a Muslim. That was actually one of your answers to one of the survey questions. And did you know that in slaughterhouses, the blades are actually being blessed? So it's not coming in, they're blessing the blades or the whole slaughterhouse. That does not work in Islam. It has to be live, and the tasmiyah has to be said live at the time of cutting the animal. We are not allowed to do that. Mechanical slaughtering is going on so quickly, which is also not allowed. In Islam, the animal has to be killed but with our hand and with a knife. But the reason is also because of the demand. The demand is so big that mechanical slaughtering is going on. Okay? Now let's look at stunning or unstunning. First of all, I'm going to look at unstun, which is what we as Muslims should go for. 100%. I've looked into all this research. So basically there was a research experiment done in America by a Jewish person, a Jewish scientist, and a Muslim scientist. And that research was done using electrodes, and EEG and ECG was monitored of the animal, and several electrodes were surgically implanted at various points of the skull of all animals, touching the surface of the brain. So first of all, when we cut, we should cut the jugular vein, which runs from the heart to the brain and immediately stops any pain. Do you know why? Because the brain is switched off. Okay? And the other artery that needs to be cut is the carotid artery from the heart, which is the main artery that runs from the heart, and it drains off the blood very, very quickly. So there's less urea in the animal and it's drained out properly and the meat stays fresher. So let's look at each stage one by one. When you slaughter an animal according to halal methods, the first 3 seconds from the time of Islamic slaughter, as recorded on the EEG, did not show any change from the graph before slaughter. Isn't that amazing? I find that absolutely amazing. Indicating the animal did not feel any pain during or after the incision. Number 2, following 3 seconds, the EEG recorded a condition of deep sleep, unconsciousness, due to a large quantity of blood gushing out from the body. That's because of the carotid artery, isn't it? Number 3, after 6 seconds, the EEG recorded 0 level, showing no feeling of pain at all. And then number 4, as the brain message EEG dropped to 0 level, the heart was still pounding. And this is a really good thing, because when a heart pounds, it's pumping out all the blood, And the body convulsively, vigorously, a reflex action of the spinal cord. And this is one requirement, is you're not allowed to cut the spinal cord off. So it's just those 2 arteries, not the whole head. The spinal cord stays intact because it drives maximum blood from the body, resulting in hygienic meat for the consumer. Did you know that halal meat has less urea in it, because the blood is all drained out, and you can keep it in the fridge for a few days? And unhalal meat, which we're going to go into in a minute, then is very, very toxic, and it does not stay fresh. We have got to a very important part, which is on the Islamic method of slaughtering. And as you saw, there's no pain at all. All these myths that are around that, you know, slaughtering is harmful for animals and causes pain. It's all really a load of rubbish, because when you look at this, it's subhanAllah, it's absolutely amazing. So let's quickly go through it again. The first 3 seconds from the time of Islamic slaughter did not show any change from the graph before slaughter, indicating the animal does not feel any pain during or after the incision. Then the animal goes into a deep sleep, unconsciousness. The reason is that all the blood is gushing out from the carotid artery that has been cut off. After 6 seconds, the EEG records 0 level, showing no feeling of pain at all. And what's amazing is the heart is still pounding. The heart is still pounding, and all the blood is coming out vigorously, a reflex action of the spinal cord, driving maximum blood out. And what you get in the end? Some lovely hygienic meat that doesn't smell, and there's no urea in there. Okay, now let us look at stunning. In your survey, it said, why do you think stunning has been introduced into the halal industry? And most of you actually said this one here, to speed up the process, and you were correct. Another part of the survey in relation to stunning was, do you consider meat which has been stunned prior to slaughter as halal? And most of you said no, and thank Allah you did. Because when I show you stunning, you will realize it's not halal. Okay? So let us look at our chicken, who does know she's about to be slaughtered. You can tell by her eyes. She's being stunned by gas, electric water bath, and head stun. So that is actually another question that was on your survey, that how are chickens stunned, and it's using those 3 methods, which is very harmful to animals. Also, did you know that according to Western method with sheep, it's CBB, stunning, captive bolt plus electric tongs, head stunned by electric tongs, and captive bolt stunning. So now let us look at the same study that was done by Professor Schultz, who is Jewish, and Dr. Hazim, who is actually Muslim, in Hanover University, Germany. So stunning put the animal in fear before slaughter. There was an increase in adrenaline, which caused the muscle to become stiff. This affected the color and tenderness of the meat. You're putting it in trauma before you've even done the slit. The animals are unconscious soon after stunning. The EEG showed severe pain immediately after stunning, even though it was unconscious. Why is that? Because the jugular vein has not been cut off. Number 3, the hearts of the animals stopped beating earlier compared to animals slaughtered according to halal method. So did you know that 33% of the animal dies from stunning? And this is actually was one of the questions on your survey there. What percentage dies from stunning? And it's a shocking amount of 33%. And then results in retention. All of this results in more retention of blood in the meat, including clotting. Because remember, the heart has stopped beating, so it's not going to pump out all the blood, is it, from the animal? So the blood is going to stay in there, so it's going to be unhygienic, and there will be more urea content in there. And it's unhygienic for the consumer because it smells. Okay? Who can tell me what percentage of halal meat today is stunned? This is going to shock you. Crazy.
About 95%.
Somebody said it there. Well done. You said it. 95% of meat is stunned today. Shock, horror. And on some of your faces. Okay? So 95% of halal meat is slaughtered stunned in UK today. And this is actually, verified figures, because obviously everybody who knows me here knows that I do my research inside out. I don't just make up things, and we've got the actual farms here with us who are actually in that industry. So did you know that by doing stunning, we are actually going against 2 different laws that are in the Quran? It tells you in the Quran, Allah has only forbidden you dead animals and blood. So what are we doing? We're actually going against those 2 laws by accepting stunned meat, because it's already dead before it's slaughtered, and on top of that, it contains a huge amount of blood because the heart has stopped beating. So it's a big worry, isn't it? Did you know that even kosher meat is not stunned? So why are we stunning our meat then? That worries me. Kosher have got it right. Why are we not doing it? Kosher meat is also more expensive. We'll cover that bit in a minute when I go to the end part. HFA are allowing stunning. It's actually on their website, so you can go on their website and you can have a look. Did you know there's also a 5-second delay between stunning and throat cutting, so there's actually more suffering when it comes to stunning as well. So now we can go through everything one by one. So intensively reared battery farming is an animal never goes out. It's in cages or concrete cubicles and only comes out when ready to be slaughtered. It's fed GM feed, genetically modified feed, and antibiotics. And the purpose is to rear animals quickly so they're slaughtered at 4 weeks. Okay? Free range. Animals spend equal time inside and out. Everything else is same as intensively reared. There is no other criteria. And slaughtered at 8 weeks. Okay? Organic. Organic is a little bit better. It's got organic certified feed, organic certified land, organic certification at point of slaughter, but it's slaughtered at 7 days. The big but is it's all stunned. All of it is. Tayyib is permissible animals reared on organic food or grass, non-GM, which is non-genetically modified, outdoor conditions with an option of shelter. Obviously, when we had our hen, we had a little shelter there to keep it away from foxes at night. And halal is animal that has been reared according to Quranic principles, hand-slaughtered, ensuring each animal does not see another animal, by a Muslim who says tasmiyah to each animal, unstunned, facing the Qibla. So you can see by that halal and tayyib is a complete category of its own. It is not a category that we can mix with organic or with free range or the top one. We can totally just not even look at that one. It's not even worth looking at, is it? Did you know that even after the meat is slaughtered, there are so many things being done to the meat to retain the color of the meat? There's my favorite animal there. Sodium chloride is added to retain the pinkness of red meat. And did you know in America they've started to use bleach in chicken meat to make it look whiter? Okay, so that is all about animals, and I've got 2 things here to show you. First of all, at the end, you can take some leaflets, notes. You always ask me for notes. Your notes are all on the tables today. Islam and animal welfare, and tayyib and halal are definitions. So those 2 are related to what we've done so far. And so far, everything that I've covered is in this excellent book. It's called Animal Welfare in Islam by Al-Hafiz Ahmad al-Masri. So you can have a look at that. It's all green with sheep on it. Also, this leaflet I mentioned earlier, Islam is pure, natural and environmentally friendly. And there is one more. I mentioned about the pig meat and everything right at the beginning. All of that in great detail is in this book. Answers to non-Muslims' common questions about Islam. It also covers non-veg food, and it also covers alcohol, and also covers pork as well. So this is all there, free for you to take. The brothers' dawah table is over there, so there's no fighting over leaflets like there was at our last lecture. And the sisters' one is over here, so you can remain segregated. Right, let us now carry on. How often do you normally eat meat or chicken? Most of you, unfortunately, said more than 3 times a week, which really is a lot. Because if you look at the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ only ate meat on festivals like Eid and on weddings. Or if he had very special guests round, he would roast a calf for them. But he was actually a semi-vegetarian. And did you know that the rise of eating meat is more in the developed countries where people have the money? Did you know that meat is actually a food for the kings? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said it's a food for the kings, and it can be addictive as well. So what is happening now is there are so many diseases which doctors are recognizing and saying it's because you're eating too much red meat especially. So cancer is actually at the top of that list. Red meat and cancer link. So this is also a study that's done by Gen Kinja and Anita Kushik. If you want to email me or text me, I can give you that reference. Red and processed meats can cause cancers, cardiovascular disease and diabetes. This is due to excessive fat, iron, nitrates which react with DNA. Non-human salicylic acid promotes tumor progression and infectious agents from bacteria, smoking, grilling, etc. And that's science research done again in America, National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health. Okay, and that was actually published in 2007, but since then, did you know that cancer is actually rapidly rising? This is less in relation to white meat, but more in relation to red meat. And in the days when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came, the very rich people in Arabia are the only ones who would eat meat just once a week on Jummah, and that was it. Okay? Right, let us look at the Prophet's diet now, which I'm going to put on next. It's a video.
سيد الكونين والثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم شفاعته لكل هول من الأهوال مقتحم ومن يصلي وسلم دائما أبدا على النبي وآل البيت كلهم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع.
So there was quite a few foods there. If you want the full list of foods the Prophet ate, this is the book to get, Healing with the Medicine of the Prophet by Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Very, very good book. Not only is it everything that he ate, but also all the medical benefits of everything that he ate. And also the notes on the table, there's the diet of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, the notes if you want to grab those later. What I'm not saying is though, is not to eat meat. Some of you are at this stage thinking, do you know what? She's about to tell us not to eat meat. That is not the way forward. Basically, eating meat is actually part of the human food chain, as you know. So eating meat is part of the human food chain. But obviously we need to eat less. And we know that Prophet Muhammad told us that no human ever filled a vessel worse than the stomach. Sufficient for any son of Adam are some morsels to keep his back straight. But it must be then 1/3 for his food, 1/3 for his drink, and 1/3 for his breath. Especially in this country, I feel we're eating too many kebabs and things like that. But what we're going to do now is to look at the way forward. Now we need to look at the way forward. So this is the last part of my talk. Industrialization of the halal meat industry has allowed businesses to make vast financial gain by exploiting the lack of legislation surrounding religious slaughter. Because of this, Tayyib and halal standards have deteriorated dramatically to the point where Islamic teachings are not being followed. Animals are being subjected to intensive farming and ill treatment. The slaughter process is being rushed for financial gain. Part of that problem is the demand from people. The demand of eating meat has, in a way, has then led to all of this rush. We rely on halal authorities to make a profit to confirm our meat is halal. International scholars and committees are allowing the use of low-volt stunning, and that actually does make me feel sick when I look at all the stuff that we looked at, the evidence. In my book, stunning is not allowed at all. You know, the animal could be dead before you eat it, and what about all the blood and the clotting that's happening in there, and the pain, as you saw, that is being caused to the animal. We do not know the source of our meat. We do not have food labelling to confirm Tayyib and halal standards. There is not a legal definition of halal in UK law. Did you know that? There is no legal definition of halal in UK law. So here is the process so far. Poultry and red meat farms who are producing the meat, then goes and it's sold to the abattoir and auction houses. Then from there it goes to the slaughterhouse, then cutting house distributors, and then to the butchers, and then to the consumer. And did you know that the chain is broken each time there is an arrow? And it means that everybody here, they are all working independently. Halal monitoring and labelling organizations come in at just the slaughterhouse stage. They ignore Tayyib, and the butchers, which is right here, they only go by the stamp that's on the box. Farm is usually independent. Farmers are sending animals to auctions or have a contract. There's absolutely no trail. Poultry is being reared to go to abattoirs. Some have their own rearing mechanisms. Others are buying in from farms. And sometimes the cattle is being auctioned, so you don't know what's happened to the cattle. Tayyib actually means organic plus unstunned. So what do you think that the legal definition of halal is in UK law? There is no legal definition of halal. And we need to actually share this information, and we need to try and raise awareness. Under EC 109-92009, responsibility for animal welfare and food safety in slaughterhouses rests with the business operator. As is the case within the UK, member states may retain national rules which prove greater protection than EU requirements. Monitoring organisations have no legal jurisdiction. They have no involvement with the farms, rearing, welfare, etc. They have no authorities in the abattoirs, and basically they just put a sticker on it. So basically we're trying to push for a legal change, and also depends country, all the meat is coming from, labelling origins of importing, cheapness, welfare, that kind of stuff. And basically Halal Animal Welfare Association, we are actually working alongside a local organic free-range halal farm called Zeus, who are both here today, and that's what our mission is, to try and promote awareness. We want to educate the general public and future generations about halal and Tayyib. And all of this, believe it or not, actually did happen with the Jewish community in the 1920s. They are far ahead of the game, far, far ahead of the game. And this is how it all started with them as well. Let's go into things a little bit more detail. So one of the other survey questions was, would you like to see labelling on halal meat? Look at how many people said yes. There's a huge bar there, a huge bar. And then the next one was, if you answered yes to the previous question, what would you like to see on the label? And people actually said halal stamp, sell-by date, country of origin, method of rearing, brackets, organic, free range or intensive, and if the animal had been stunned or non-stunned. That's everything that we spoke about. And what's interesting is everybody has actually ticked that on their survey. So we need to introduce basically what can be done to resolve this agricultural crisis. Basically, we need to have a look at some of these pointers. So we need to introduce a legal definition of halal, working with Muslims to ensure there are no legal loopholes, and consumer demands taken into account. Jewish communities achieved this in the 1920s, which I think is sad. Encouraging streamlined regulations using current structure of the Food Standards Agency to monitor all halal slaughter instead of relying on halal monitoring organizations who profit up to 2.6 million per year for monitoring unstunned halal slaughter to their own interpretation. Exemption from stunning needs to be written down. Kosher cannot be performed, did you know, by anyone who is not approved by the Shashita body. We need that as well. We need to train our slaughtermen, improve our slaughter methods, improve our welfare and take ownership. We need farm checks, know how the animal was raised, cared for. We would have to set our own criteria for farms that want to service the halal and tayyib industry. Now that seems a lot, but basically with the amount of support that we've had so far, I don't believe that it won't happen. I think that it will. And there are so many people looking into their meat at the moment and so many questions that I personally get from the community. I think that it will go ahead, and we've had a huge amount of interest just in this talk today, and inshallah we're going to try and go national. We've already had people in Newcastle calling me saying, can we have it there? And we had Cheltenham, someone rang me from Cheltenham and said, can we have the talk here? I've got people waiting for this talk to go out on YouTube because they want to listen. So the interest is actually there. We need to strive for better advertising requirements, making sure market information for consumers is accurate and simple, helping deliver a strong free market that aids Muslims, Jews and animal rights campaigners who will know exactly what happens to their meat. Propose labelling laws by defining halal in law, and we are working with the law. We are not going to work against the law. We're not allowed to do that as Muslims, as you know. We can eliminate all the confusion surrounding halal and proceed with the proposed laws with 3 criteria: halal, kosher, and non-religious. Did you know that because there were no laws in halal, pig was found in pakoras? Do you remember when that came out? As an ingredient in halal label. It was labelled halal and there were pigs in the pakoras. And no one prosecuted. This was a Daily Mail article. Why didn't they prosecute? Because there was no legal definition for halal, you know. So it's really happening around us. Okay, some more pointers. Educating Muslim consumers, informing about farming practices and the halal industry, as well as Islamic guidance, rulings and standards we want. And you saw all the halal rulings today. A lifestyle change. The meat industry runs on supply and demand. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a semi-vegetarian. We need to try and follow his actions. We're not saying give up your meat, but eat in moderation, like he did. Okay? Be humble. Because it is actually, all of this is happening because of the demand, as we saw. Encouraging future generations to study farming and food production. I think what makes me laugh is when Sister Sama told me she went to an auction or something, was it? And she went there and they said, what are you doing here? Muslims aren't farmers. You know, if more Muslims went into the farming industry, it would make life a lot more easier, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to quickly show you one very important leaflet, which I'd like all of you to pick up before you go, or before you eat. The Hidden Crisis. This is a very, very important Halal leaflet. It's got a summary of all of these points on there, okay? Now, I know what some of you are going to say, and I've heard this before. You're going to say, well, it's the butcher's fault. We just buy from him because it says halal, and it doesn't matter because he's the sinful one. He is the one who's going to be put to the test. We're just buying the meat from what he's told us. But who has heard of the saying in the Quran that we have been put on this earth as khalifas? Okay, that's in the Quran many, many times. Did you know that one of the first things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the angels when he made humans was that I'm putting this person on the world as a khalifa? Just think when your Lord said to the angels, lo, I'm about to place a caliph on earth. That's in Surah Baqarah, the cow, chapter 2, verse 30. So we cannot put the responsibility on others. At the end of the day, we have been given the task to be responsible for all that we do in this world. The Quran mentions this term, Khalifa. We have put humans on earth as responsible for what we do. So each of us are to respect and be responsible for our actions, including accountability on the Day of Judgment as well. So that brings me to the end. If one of the sisters could please put on the lights, and if I could have Mutahir here, please, to be my helper. After the talk, I'm going to send around a clipboard, and if you can pop your email addresses on there, then we can keep letting you know how far we are in the process, and you can come to more detailed talks. This was actually the launch talk, and was done in such a simple way for you all to understand what is happening. Right, we're going to have questions now from the floor, and if you could put your hand up, and we will answer those, actually, all three of us. So we've got the Hawa representative here, the Zeus Farm representative here. Brothers can ask the brother afterwards if you want to while we eat. Okay? Right, let's have some questions. Shall we have you first?
Yes.
What kind of animal meat are we allowed to eat as Muslims?
Say that again. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Say, for example, we can eat goat, sheep, turkey. Are there any other kind of animal meat that we are allowed to eat legally? What it says in the Quran?
Yes, I put a list up. I don't know if you saw that list. It was a very big list, but I'll put it up again for you, and you can just read it. It will be easier. Because I know today we are going to get a lot of questions. So basically, this is the whole list. Okay, you can just read it. That's the whole list of animals that we can eat at the top there. Okay, right, anybody else? Questions? Let's have this sister here.
So if we buy our meat from a butcher's which has a HMC certificate displayed, does that mean we should still question it?
Yes, of course you should.
So how will we know what to buy as consumers?
Right. Anybody want to answer that one?
This is exactly why we're here today. So Savannah, we've had the farm for almost 11 years now. We didn't buy the farm for farming. We actually have an electronics company. But we were questioning exactly what everyone else is questioning in this room today. What is happening in the industry? And we started rearing our own produce. Alhamdulillah, we built our own abattoir on site. But we never started farming from a commercial perspective. It really was just, we wanted it for our family, we wanted to share with others. Due to personal circumstances, we're not sharing at the moment. But what we're finding is, coming back out after all these years, the industry hasn't changed. It's exactly the same. In fact, it's just got worse. So this is exactly why we're here today. We need to talk about these things. We need to understand there is no legislation. There is nothing protecting us. Like Sister Sidra said, if there was products that contained pork and it was labelled halal and nobody was prosecuted, this is why we need to be questioning these things. We need to take account and we need to take responsibility. And the reason that we're here is because we want to be able to help you move forward. Just because we're not sharing our produce, we feel that we are responsible. We have this knowledge. We have almost 5 years of, well, in fact, that we had zero experience. And now that, alhamdulillah, we can talk to you about rearing animals, we can talk you through the slaughter process, we've built a slaughterhouse, we're in touch with the FSA, we know how things are done, but we can't deal with the demand. And alhamdulillah, the demand is great. So until we change the industry, but firstly it starts with the consumer understanding what we're saying and what we're doing and why we're doing it. So questioning labels, questioning butchers, yes, you're right, but like we showed you, they're so detached. They don't know what's happening, and it's not their fault. Yeah, there's no blame here. It's really about we need to unite, and we need to then start talking about what we can do to help each other. And this is why we're here today.
Yeah, I just also wanted to make it crystal clear that the farm is not here to make a business out of all of this either. They've completely stopped their produce and everything. To show people that it is not for any advertisement or for any type of business whatsoever. It's mainly because we are concerned about what is happening, and I think we should be really, the way things are going as well. Okay, any more questions? Do you want to come over?
It seems to me in your lecture there is nothing for us to eat as halal, because they're all chicken and sheep, they're all being stunned and then killed.
You can have fish.
Yeah,
fish doesn't need to be slaughtered.
No, I'm talking about meat or chicken.
Yes.
Apart from the Tayyib, obviously they are not in a position to sell or mass production. So why do we go? Where do you get our chicken and meat from?
Obviously, we're not sat here saying to you that don't eat it, but we're saying to you to be wary and be careful. But inshallah, by supporting the campaign, the first and foremost thing that we need to do is we need to protect the legislation. We need to go for legislation. We need to have a definition of halal and tayyib. So as it stands today, that halal certificate you're seeing, what does it mean? And then secondly by increasing, firstly by having the criteria, we can then move forward by ensuring that we are having halal and tayyib. We should be at the forefront as Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this in the Quran. And sadly, if you look at for example, the EU legislation of organic, we are being dictated to that we can't label our product organic because they want us to stun. But we should be the ones setting the example. We should be the ones that are at the front of this. So in the interim, it's a decision that you have to make. But moving forward, inshallah, this is something that we want to work together with and be able to ensure. For me personally, I'm looking at my grandchildren. If we don't do something now, what are they going to be eating? What is going to be there for them? You want to ensure that we know what they're having. So, that's it.
It's for that reason, brother, that we did this talk, really. But it is a worry. There's a brother right at the back there with the black hat on. Go this way round.
Assalamu alaikum. It was a good session. It's good to know that regarding the halals and all this stuff. So what is an action plan next to avoid all this confusion and all? I know HMCs and all of the stuff are here. So what as a community, what are we doing? As my understanding is, we don't have anything halal to eat. 95% is not done in what we done. And also, what are we going to do?
Yes.
I'm shocked to hear that there is no law to define what is halal and all of that stuff. So why it is not there? Because I'm a bit surprised because We're having a very strong Muslim community in UK in terms of a lot of sheikhs and all other things. Why it's not there? Is only concerned to our group, or why this is not there anywhere?
Yes, I mean, like I explained, the Jewish community have had their laws since 1920s, but they have already been established here since a long time. It's only really very recently that Muslim population has really increased, but also there's a lot of spoofs out there as well, so they're doing things just for money and things like that at each stage. There's no connection between all the stages, but inshallah we are going towards a law. This is why we're doing this. The initial stage really is to collect all the data, you see, and informing people, educating them about stunning, non-stunning, organic included stunning, that kind of stuff. And then everything else will be later.
I did actually go to visit my local MP to discuss this, and this is something that we do need to be talking to our local MPs about. And subhanAllah, this was, I think it was around February time this year, and what I got told was, Mrs. Khan, you're on your own. It's just you. And that's what got me to realise, and this is why we've come about as an organisation, because alhamdulillah, I'm sure it's not just me. We need unity. We all need to be talking about this. We all need to be going and speaking to our local MPs. If you're not able to do that, we're able to help you. But we need backing from the consumer. We need backing from us as an ummah to be able to take this forward. Sadly, a few years ago, there were a few organisations that had the opportunity to go for legislation, and from what they told me, they couldn't sit in front of the government and actually make a decision. They argued, and it got left. And this is the thing: we're not asking for anything that we're not entitled to. We just want to ensure that what we're getting is what we think we're getting. I'm just going to pass you to Sister Yasmin.
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to add on to what Sister Simon is saying. I think it's really important as a community we do get united and get together, but I think from the research that I've done, from conversations that I've had with people, it starts from the home. It starts from parents, siblings, everyone having this narrative, because there seems to be divisions within the family, you know, whether that is to do with our mothers, whether that is to do with where we're practicing or not practicing. So I think these conversations are very important, especially for parents. I'm a parent myself. As Sister Simon said, we're worried about the future generation. Okay, we might have missed out, we might have not done as much, but still there's hope. There's always hope, and Allah gives us that. So it's all about the future generation, having those conversations, explaining to them what Halal and Tayyib is, and also connecting with nature, because we seem to be so disconnected in so many things. I mean, I could go on forever and talk about social media and all these other factors that are playing a huge impact on our children's childhoods. So please have those conversations with your children, but also your families, you know, your siblings, you know, your relatives, because as I mentioned before, some of the conversations I've had sisters saying to me, we've ended up having arguments because, is it halal? I'm not in halal, you don't know this, you don't know that. So let's have those conversations, please, within the home. It starts from the home.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, if you can come round here, there's a brother here at the front.
My question is slightly scientific. When does the pain actually stop in the animal? When the jugular veins are cut, or the nerves are cut, or the carotid arteries are cut? And finally, my suggestion for today would be, or for future, to have a draft letter that we can send to our MP, so we put our name and address on any signature. I think that would be a good way forward.
I'd like to answer that question as a scientist. It's the jugular vein. The jugular vein runs from the brain to the rest of the body as soon as it's cut, which is exactly at slaughter time. No pain at all, like you saw in that chart. And if anybody wants those two slides, because I thought they were excellent, the one about stunning and the one about not stunning, I can WhatsApp them to you or email or whatever. Okay? Right, there was one brother here, over there. Let's see.
Assalamu alaikum. It is
interesting to see that the butchers who say that all this meat they are selling is halal, and they don't follow what is the meaning of halal from the beginning to the end.
Yes.
Who are suffering? They are our mothers and sisters who are buying this meat from them. Because when they go to them, they just see the HMC halal. They believe kalas. That is halal. And when you ask them that is this halal, they tell you, I've been there, I don't eat meat now because of it. I've been there, I've seen them, I've seen how they deliver it. The only time I was eating meat was when we can kill it here ourselves. There was a time here when you can kill meat, animal for yourself. But our butchers, they are Muslim who are selling this to our sisters. And the chicken shops and things like that, they are the ones selling it to our kids. It is heartbreaking. Our kids, they leave school in the afternoon, all you see them eating is 4 weeks old chicken. Will it not affect their life?
Yes.
We know that it will affect their characters.
Yes,
it will affect everything in their life. Why can't we raise awareness of this?
Yes.
For our wives, our sisters, our mothers, that before you buy meat, ask the butcher. We know that is the last person before the consumer, according to your diagram. Do you know what is halal meat? Do you know how it starts? And where before it comes to you?
Yes.
But halal, because we are Muslim, we believe in them. And it is disgracing to see that it's Muslims selling this thing to Muslims. You will not see an Englishman, when you go to an Englishman shop, they will not put halal there. But it's the Muslim who are doing this to Muslims.
Okay, then thank you very much. I think we need you here next time for that one. Okay, can we have the brother next to him? It will save you going to the ladies.
Legal legislation on halal. Is there one for kosher?
Kosher has one. Kosher has one. Like I said, 1920s onwards, they've had their laws. Kosher has one. This is what I mean. We need to wake up and catch up with the Jewish community. 1920 is when they had their laws.
So would that not be a good starting point?
Yes, that's a good starting point. Very good starting point. Yes. The kosher community, the Jewish community, educated their consumers first, which is why we are starting at that same point. We're repeating history. They educated their consumers to get that law, and this is why we're doing this. Okay? We're the first ones. There's always a first, isn't there? This is why I said at the very beginning that this is a very important talk. The most important talk that I probably will ever do in my life. Okay? We've got a brother there who wants to ask a question, so we'll give the floor to him now.
It's more of a comment rather than a question. It seems that the Muslims are the enemy of Muslims. Like the brother was saying, when you talk to MCB, HMC, HFA, it's a billion-pound industry, and they're only interested in their own, what they can make out of it. So I don't think we can rely on these kind of so-called agencies who've been negotiating and arguing with each other. It looks like we need to kind of take further action with our own farms, start from the beginning, have our own farms. So you can look at the actual sequence, from the animal upbringing all the way to slaughter, selling. So, I don't think the government is going to do anything. The brother here mentioned about the Jewish community. We can't even agree what halal means, never mind following another religion. There's no money to be made in following the Jewish religion. It's going to only benefit the kosher industry, not the halal industry. So I think we need to start from scratch.
Well done, brother. Shall we have Fasila next? Fasila over there.
For what I've heard, I think we should boycott all the buying the chicken. That's where we start. Stop buying the meat.
Yes. I did explain that a little bit.
Don't mind me completely.
Have corn instead. Can we have corn instead? No? Because that even worse. But fish is okay. Yeah. There's lots of alternatives.
But even the fishes, there's a question over there. They're farming fish in multitudes. So there's a question there. They've got disease.
Let's go for frozen fish. Assalamu alaikum. For fish, as per your question earlier, what can Muslims eat? Farmed fish is on the increase, but if you go, next time you're shopping, go for the frozen fish and look for wild caught out at sea. People have this misconception that if it's frozen, it's no good. But it's wrong. When the fish is caught out at sea, it's frozen, it's still got all the nutrients in it, it's wild, there's no antibiotics, no chemicals, it's better than farmed fish. So go for the frozen fish.
Sorry, yeah, just when you say frozen fish and farm fish, there are so many farm fish that have antibiotics, and especially the tilapia, fish like these white fishes, which is again not good to eat. The thing I wanted to make awareness to the Muslim community through the Imam of every mosque, because we have started something and people should get in touch with us so that we can reach to our own MPs, councillors. So we have to get everybody involved. To get it. I mean, they do it. Probably they could do it in 1920 or 30. I mean, this is 2018.
We are working towards that. I mean, we're going to have a slot in East London Mosque, Regent Park Mosque, Croydon Mosque. We've got some sisters here from Croydon who are going to set up something there. Those are three very major mosques. Inshallah, we will get there slowly. After this YouTube video goes out, we're going to have lots more interest. We have already started a little bit of our campaign, and the questionnaires, we've had over 500-600 questionnaires completed. And so far, alhamdulillah, it's going well. I wouldn't be supporting it if I thought it wasn't a good cause. As you know, I'm so busy, but, I feel something needs to be done, which is why I'm here today.
It's very important because so many people opening madrasas, Islamic educational center. This is vital. It's very important.
Yes.
Like you said, we are what we eat, and this got to be placed in the forefront of our list before you do anything.
Yes. Yes. Jazakallah for that. There's a brother over there at the end.
How we can convince the authority? Our slaughtering the sheep or animal, it is not painful. Because the animal right lobby always they indicate to Muslim, our slaughtering is very painful.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah.
We've got another farmer here.
You see all these anti-graft and all these organizations lobbying Muslims.
Yeah, even
I'll tell you why. Because they haven't seen the real halal in abattoirs.
Yes.
You should go to the abattoirs and see the so-called halal, and you'll be shocked. Because the way Muslims are slaughtering animals isn't the proper way, you see. They haven't been trained. It's so easy to get a license. Anyone from the street can come and get a license.
Yes, that's very true.
And that is the problem.
Yes.
We are not training
Yes.
our people. To be a rabbi, you need to know how to slaughter animals.
Yes.
You need to know how to hold a knife.
Yes.
Our imams, you need to ask them, have they been to the abattoirs? You see, so this is the question. As a ummah, we need to start educating ourselves.
Yes, that's very true, because I did put a slide up where I explained that we need to educate slaughtermen, and also I did mention about the Jewish community they have to be part of some society before they even, yes.
And also, one more thing, yeah, you're right, the FSA is looking for a standard from the Muslim community,
Yes.
but we can't organise ourselves, we can't unite on a standard. We have so many organisations coming together, but they're just arguing, and we don't want to come to a common ground, so well, this is our standard, please endorse it. But they are ready.
Yes. We've got a sister here who wants to make a comment.
I'm just picking up from the last point before we broke this law. We have an exemption in law already, which is written in a piece of legislation called WATER, That piece of legislation already gives us the right to unstunt slaughter, so there's no need for us to have to go for that. But what that doesn't do is define it, and there's no legal there's sort of no legal law behind that says that we have to execute that. So this is what we're trying to explain, that we have the right, but there's nothing there behind that makes that it's 100% that we have to do it. And this is where the choice is coming from. So this is why we need to unite, we need to go for the legal definition, we need to, as an ummah, we need to first agree that we don't want the study to happen. It's already there in place for us. There's nothing that we need to change. It's just for us then to implement it and to work with the FSA. They're happy to work with us. We've had dealings with the FSA. Alhamdulillah, they're more than complimentary. They're very happy to work with us. They agree with our ways, our methods. It's just what's being said is completely different to what's happening, and this is what we want to expel those myths. We are there, we're in touch with them, and we want to work with them, and it's getting everybody else then to understand. When I went to my local MP, the first thing he said to me was, oh, Mrs. Khan is not going to get banned, because if we ban it for you, we have to ban it for the Jews. So that's the first thing we need to remember, that if they do anything to us, it's automatically for the Jewish community, which is not going to happen. So you have to be reassured of that. We have the exemption, we have everything there. It's now for us to move forward together.
Okay, are there any more questions? I can only see brothers' hands up. So let's go to the brother over there. Yes.
I thank my wife for bringing me here today. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate the efforts you're making. I've actually given up on the ummah with respect to halal and around food, because I can see a lot of injustice going on here. I'm happy you actually mentioned the HFC and the HMC and all of that. They are all in for the money. A few years ago, I was going to buy bulk meat, beef, for a caterer. I went somewhere in Thamesmead, a warehouse, and when I was about to pay, I asked one of the guys working there, I said, are you sure it's halal? He told me, he said, oh yeah, look at the box, Arabic written on it. I looked at it, it says in Arabic produce of somewhere. I left there, I went to East London, I went, what's it called? No, Upton Park. Yes. And I went to one of the shops, yes, and I said, I want to buy bulk beef for a caterer, halal. Yes. The guy called me aside, he said to me, my father owns this business. I can only guarantee you the chickens halal, but beef, people say it's halal. I am not sure. I can't lie to you because you're a good Muslim brother. Right. And so since then, I've given up. So I'm actually happy for what you're doing here. Yes. Now, we can educate the masses as much as we like, but that's not going to get the unity, because the Ummah cannot sit down and agree definition of halal. Yes. They will fight because of the HMC and all of that. Multi-million dollars, they give money to people to support their cause. So the suggestions I've got is, yes, we keep doing what we're doing, create the awareness, but at the same time, we need to work with like MCD to make sure that the community needs to own the monitoring agency. Look at this country, FSA is not owned by private companies, it is government. So you can't allow HMC to be monitoring because they are private business, they make their money. So MCB needs to take ownership, and then they can now come up with a joint proposal for what is halal, and then you approach the government, and then they monitor. You can't leave the monitoring to anybody, but the community, we need to own it. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, right, I think we better have a sister now, otherwise I'm going to get into trouble. Can you go all the way round the back of the crowd, and there's a sister there right in the corner with her hand straight up in the air. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. And first of all, I just want to, from my heart, thank you, Ustadha, Sidra and Saima sister for your tremendous efforts.
And Gemma as well. We mustn't forget our lovely Reba and Gemma.
All of the activists who are involved.
And yes,
we really need this. We really appreciate it. We can feel the urgency, I think, in the room for change. And I want to say, yeah, I'm excited about the positivity that we have here as well. I know there's obstacles, I know there's hurdles in front of us, but together we can, if we unite.
Inshallah. And you can get all the crowds from Cambridge, can't you? Because you're from Cambridge today.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of sisters in Cambridge as well who want to be involved. So just keep us involved. We'll do what we need to do to address this very important issue. It's for our own good, it's for our hereafter, it's for the sake of our children, what they're putting in their bodies. You know, only good can come from it. As long as we keep the momentum going.
Yes.
And
there is a clipboard going around and people are writing their email addresses on it. If we can keep that going, and
every
keep
single one of us needs to sign up on that. And
yes, they do.
And we'll do what we can to promote your message.
Okay, thank you very much. If you could give your microphone to the sister there in the pink.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to say that there's power in number. We need to first of all change our attitudes, our eating attitudes. We eat a lot of porridge, we eat a lot of meat. We need to go back to being healthy. And after that, what I want us to do is we need to go around our butchers, speak to them, they're Muslims, prick their consciences. If you know this is not right, how would you give it to another Muslim? How would you stand before Allah on the best of days and say you gave to another Muslim what should be harmful to them? What does not suit the laws of Allah? And by the time we all begin to gradually stop buying the chicken, and then they're losing money, they will do something about it. That is one way we can go. While we're trying to educate, create the awareness we are creating at this program, I will continue with that. But those are things we can also do. There are so many little things that we do that can have ripple effects. And it's for us to take ownership of it, because we are everywhere, we are what we eat. We all wear good clothes, we stay in beautiful houses, and then we eat junk.
Yes.
And we forget that we live with our bodies, and our bodies are going to account against us if we continue like this. That's what I want to say. Let's organize, let's speak to our butchers in our local community, just like we're speaking to our MPs. Let's to our local butchers. Let us talk to them. They have emotions, they want to earn money, but they want their sources to be halal as well. So that what they eat from becomes halal. What you spend on your families becomes halal too. So we need to also take it from there. That will also work, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah for that. Okay, are there any more questions in the ladies, in the sisters? Okay, if we can come over here, just pass the microphone across.
I'm just appalled by the way. I've always believed that HMC was like proper halal way they've done.
Yes.
I'm appalled by the way. I always used to believe the HMC meat was like proper halal way done, but now that I've listened to it and I found that really shocked. So
yes,
how can we like get meat from the halal Tayyib way? How can we order meat, or like what can we do to like suppliers add them supplies?
In answer to that question, I think by consuming less meat, the producers, the abattoirs will all realise that the population of Muslims in this country are changing their eating habits, and they'll have no choice but to focus on the Tayyib, on the welfare. That's the only way you're going to do it as a population. You vote by, your actions. That's the only way I can think of.
I like that one, actually. I think that's a really good answer. I'm just wary that we've got food at the back and it's getting cold, so if we just take a couple of more questions and then we are going to have to stop. So let's have somebody who hasn't done a question before. Have you got a question? So if we can do people who have not asked a question, others we will be here forever. That's the best way. Okay, so we're going to give someone else a chance.
Sorry.
Where's my helper? Come round here, please. Please over there. I hope you're not eating.
Yeah, you know, you said about milk as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we have problem in the milk. So how can we, you know, make sure the milk, even the organic one, is good for us?
I think organic is okay for now, isn't it, with the milk? Organic is more or less much better than the other milk. Go organic with the milk. Okay? Right. Brother over there in the corner.
You have to go.
If you could put your hand up so he knows where to go. Poor thing is confused where he has to go.
Just two questions. First is it by law the animals have to be stunned, or is it an option?
No, it's an option.
It's
not a law. Basically, as Muslims, just like Jews, we have the choice when it comes to slaughtering. What's happened is, when you stun an animal, you can kill thousands more animals when you stun. There's less noise, less mess, and it's all to do with production, all to do with output, money. That's what it boils down to. So we have, just like the Jews, that ability to do unstunned, but you know, the market, as Sister mentioned earlier, you know, 95% is stunned because it's all to do with money, all to do with output.
One more question. Obviously, everyone's talking about how to pass laws and things like that. Why don't we come around from the other side? When the brothers open a farm, I mean, how difficult is it to open a farm and just to have communities having farms where you can get meat and access to meat? I mean, how much would it cost, licensing and stuff?
You've got a future farmer there.
Basically, we encourage, we have so many visitors to the farm that we encourage people to say, look, you know, if communities got together and done this themselves, you know, there's people who have come to the farm that have extended families that have bought 2 or 3 acres and farm their own produce on there, just for themselves. So we encourage that. It's until the Muslim population make a stance that the big producers will then have no choice but to change the way they're feeding us.
And how difficult is it to open a farm or not?
It's not very difficult. You just need the money to buy the land, and then what's key, and this is the biggest factor, is hard work. You're going to be there, you know, 7 days a week, 24/7, and that's the thing with livestock. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to go off visiting my family, because you've got to think about the animals. You've got to think, okay, the chickens, they're not going to go in until it gets dark. So you have to wait until they go in before you can go out.
Okay, shall we have one more from the sisters? Is there anybody from the sisters who wants to ask a question? Okay, we'll have one last one from the brothers, and then we've got to eat. Okay, so over here.
Another thing is Tesco, they started saying that they are selling halal meat in Tesco.
Yes, Tesco is selling halal meat, but it's all stunned, isn't it?
Yeah, that is what I was going to say, because we have to be wary about that as well.
Yes.
When Tesco says it's selling halal meat, what is the source? How do they know the meaning of halal? Because of the way, if you see the process of something being halal.
Well, I'd just like to answer that. Tesco's were also selling beef, same as Asda and Sainsbury's 2 years ago, and what was in the beef? Horse. Yeah. So if the big supermarkets can be duped into buying horse meat, you know, how bad is it in the halal industry?
Yes, yes.
It all boils down to the legal definition. If all the Muslims are all pushing for unstunned and for labelling, and I think after Brexit, there is, when my wife was talking to a local MP, basically the agricultural minister, they are looking at labelling laws now. And now if there's labelling laws, there's no need for HFA or HMC, because at the abattoir where the FSA inspectors are, the product will be labelled stunned, unstunned, or however the Muslims, you know, go. There'll be no need for governing bodies, because everything will be, you know, labelled in one way.
Yes, that's what we definitely need to push for. The sister.
That's just a general view. The local farm, is anybody here from there? You can't hear. Can they answer some of these?
Yes, I can answer that one. We've already looked into that one. And they do stunning, don't they? But they have an option.
Yeah.
They have an option. So if you ask, I want it non-stun, they'll do it non-stun. Yes, Tompkins Lane. Yes, that's a very good question. Have you got anything to add to that?
Basically, they will unstun slaughter there on sheep or goats, not on cows. They don't have the facility to do cows unstun there, but sheep and goats they will. But on for Qurbani or anything like that, they won't do unstunned on those days because the volume involved. So if you just wanted to geek out or just for your own freezers and you got together and there was 5 or 10 lambs, you know, a group of you together, you can actually go there, pick the lambs, and they may even let you watch the slaughtering. That's where we were taking our lambs. They would let me watch every single one done, you know, so not another one sees it or anything. But yeah, you have to ask them that first. If you turn up on the day, it'll just be, no, you're going to have it the same as we've always done it, which is stunned.
And is it true that that's a Jewish slaughterhouse?
Yes, it is a Jewish slaughterhouse.
Which don't stun for their own meat, kosher
But they
meat,
stun for Muslims.
but it's stunned for Muslims. That's a very important point, don't you think? So they're not stunned for kosher, but it's stunned for
Halal,
Muslims.
yeah.
So this is why it's so important then to take the lead, isn't it? Okay, that's a very good point. Okay, did you want one more question?
Which place is that? What's the name of that?
Tompkins Lane. What is the name of the slaughterhouse? Up Minister. Yes. Yes.
What about during the heat?
That's the one that you
It's done. During the heat.
So, yeah, because they do so many, everything's done. But if you go there, if there's a group of you and you go there and you pre-book it, say to them you want it unstunned, they'll do unstunned for you.
But I remember when they used to be here, but this on this board.
It's the same company.
Yeah, I know. Like we used to when they used to be here.
Yeah, but now it's changed. Now the rules, you can't do slaughtering yourself.
Last question, because the food is getting cold.
Yeah, just to add something, like say, there was a research done on stunning.
Yes,
and if we can prove this to the authority, like the animal welfare and the people involved, since there are so many people against it, yeah, and if you can somehow get together all these people on our side and show them that it's no pain at all. So probably this way we can convince the mass people.
Yes, inshallah. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Some of us are wearing green and white. It's not to support Pakistan, because we're all British. We're here dressed like this for a reason, because we are the people representing Hawa. Okay? So anyone you see with a badge on or dressed in green and white, you can still ask questions during the eating session. You'll be happy to know it's not meat. The food is all vegetarian. I just also really wanted to say thank you to 2 brothers who came very early in the morning today to help set all this up. And you know what, we wouldn't have managed all this without them, because there was a lot of work involved, as you can guess, taking chairs out, tables, everything needed sorting. So I just wanted to say Jazakallah khair to them as well, because it's not just the sister support I get. Alhamdulillah, this year I would say I've got a lot of support from brothers as well, which was lacking before. So I just wanted to say Jazakallah to them. If you can make your way in a nice orderly manner, without fighting and pushing and shoving, at the back, and you can choose whatever food you want, and then if you can please come back to your seats to eat, that will just save overcrowding at the back. Okay, so help yourself, first come, first serve.